That's all right. Okay, TV 79, you're ready for us?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I can call this meeting to order. This is Wednesday, January 23rd. This is a regular meeting of the Pear Beach Building Committee. Thank you all for joining us. The first item on our agenda here is the approval of the minutes from the 16th. I'm guessing everybody has gotten a copy. I know Tom sent them out a few days back. Any comments on the meeting, on the minutes? Yes.
One thing I didn't understand, under the architect RFP discussion, it said it was determined that the last, well, I'm actually, the last three firms listed above. Does that mean that?
In order, the last three that are in the
Okay.
paragraph was determined to be
Would
lower
be asked
cost.
to continue with the process. I didn't know that we had specifically
Yeah,
made that
I had that
decision.
change also, so I think what I had said,
That was true.
yeah, I think what I had said was we would, because I've been cautious about it, so I think what I had said is that we would consider asking them to continue with the process. I didn't want to get ahead of ourselves and suggest that we had voted and agreed on it. Does that work for you, Mark?
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Okay, so Tom, if you can make that change.
It won't be until Saturday, if that's okay. I
think-
don't get in trouble with the minutes police, but I'm leaving tomorrow on a 6 o'clock flight to Atlanta. So
Okay, maybe I can make the change.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the only change,
that's fine.
Yeah, I'll make the change for you, don't worry
Thank
about it.
you want to deputize Pam to?
Yeah, so you have the correct, I didn't write down the correct thing, but you
Yes.
have it, right?
Yeah,
And I'll
I
make the
think we
changes.
both caught the
Thank
same thing.
Well,
Any-
really good, because I read that, not being here, I was able to read on it, knew what you
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I was mentioning, and maybe I'll take the opportunity to, offline, that credit to you, Tom. Thank you so much. You're the unsung hero here, keeping us moving forward.
Here,
So
here.
thanks very much. Don't get enough credit for that. So,
Thank you.
any other comments on the minutes at this point? Okay, so can I invite a motion to
I
approve?
make a
them?
motion to approve with the changes that Pam will make.
Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor? So, Lori, you have.
I'll abstain, I wasn't here.
Pardon? You don't vote, but I thought you had a question about the minutes.
I had a question on whether I vote,
Oh.
but I think the answer's no.
Actually, it's a good question. I thought there was 7 of us, and I thought you were ex officio, and I think you don't vote.
No,
Ex officios don't vote.
You have a right to make a face, and then we have to respond to it.
Okay, that was what the face was for.
Okay. That's great. So with the amendment, then it looks like the motion has. Oh, all those in favor?
Everybody unanimous.
Great. Thank you.
It's most people.
Okay, so that's great. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, public comment. So I know we do have one member of one of our neighbors present here. Any, if we can invite any comments from the public at this stage?
Just thank you. I see that you're diligently moving forward. So thank you.
Great, thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, so moving on to the next item, obviously we've been working towards this point for quite some time now. So the next item on our agenda is a discussion and then a vote on the selection of the 3 architectural design firms that we'll ultimately invite to join us in interviews. I thought maybe the way to kind of just kick this off is we'll just ask Pam to just, for some background, maybe just once again remind us who we're talking about here and what we've received, and then we can open it up for discussion.
so we were fortunate enough to get 5 proposals from professional architect designers. And 3 of those 5 were within budget of what the town has set aside for us for the project, and 2 of which are, not a little over budget, but a quite substantial amount over budget. So, and we have, to name them, we have Land Tech, we have Neil Hoff, and we have Schmidt, all within budget. And we have Stan Tech and Q&A&M that were pretty far over budget. Although outstanding proposals, in my opinion, we have 3 professional groups within budget, and I think it made the decision, in my opinion, quite black and white. So my proposal would be to go with the 3 firms that bid at 150, 144, and 136. And the other two, for the record, were $291,000 and $333,000.
Okay, that's great.
Do you think, I mean, some of these were very, very extensive in some of the things that they were going to be doing, and some were maybe a little bit less extensive. And I've never done one of these kind of things before. I'm just surprised at the sling, and whether it's, one is all inclusive, or I mean, the one that really blew me away was QA&M.
Yeah.
Not only in what they wrote, but their presentation of the material, and it just round numbers, $150,000 difference between the top end and the middle just seemed to be, maybe are we missing something in it, and I don't really know.
Well, it's my sense that we'll obviously learn a lot through the interviews, and to your point, it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag from my perspective in terms of the quality and the scope of the responses. The other thing I would suggest to the group is, to the committee, is I don't think if we were to move forward with Pam's recommendation, it doesn't foreclose the possibility that we can invite these other guys in at some point if they're willing to come in, even though at this stage they're above our number. We have to think about what we're really achieving in doing that. Obviously they are out of a budget range, but once again, if they're willing to come and chat with us, we may learn something, and that could guide us with, decision-making process. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we have the luxury of only 5 responses. For instance, I thought Stan Tech's proposal was outstanding. It was the best one by far in my opinion. They were the only ones that took the time to visit the beach twice. They considered rock formations with respect to piers. I mean, it was a very comprehensive, thoughtful proposal. And, I think it would behoove us to speak to them. They may come in and we may interview all 5 and we say, we're comfortable with the lower bidders, or we may say, we're really impressed by Stantec, and maybe it's worth paying a little bit more up front to set things up properly so that the project in the long run comes out very well.
Yep.
So I guess I would recommend that we interview 5, just so we treat everybody fairly, because we're sort of asking them for the questions you sent out for a little bit different information.
Yeah.
And the other thought I had is, it became clear to me, the construction documents are really a function of what schematic we choose. And right now, a question in my mind is are the prices that they submitted, are they all looking at doing all of the components of the project? And if, I sort of would feel more comfortable asking them for a price through the schematic phase. Once we get that, then negotiating, because who knows what we're going to select.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they may have built in absolutely everything when we may not select everything.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's my thought.
it's an interesting observation. Maybe I'll just open it up at this stage.
Can I ask a hypothetical question? I should know this, but I've been off the Board of Finance for too long. I mean, say we talked to the 3 and just said they're just not getting what we want here, and one of the other 2 is, do we have the opportunity to go back and ask for money, or does that just put us dead in the water for another year and have to go back?
I'm sorry, ask for,
If we said, no, we really want Stantec for 2 whatever, is that even an option to go back and request additional money, or is just 150, that's it? That's all we got?
I'm sorry, you're saying
For the
increase the
design phase.
budget as
Right.
opposed to what we were,
Right.
what the target
You
was.
remember, Martha?
Well, I mean, Kate said, as long as you talk to everybody the same way, we could ask them, what is your price for the schematics? We may be surprised at how they move.
No, that wasn't my question.
I think the
No, I know.
question,
My
go back to the
question
Board of
is, if we really feel that to get what we
It's
need, we need to
Q&A.
spend more than, because I don't remember where that
Well-
150 number came for, what would be, is that even an option?
Well-
Maybe the first selectman can answer, but you know, the Board of Ed right now is off budget cycle and they're asking for money for electric panels. I mean, I think, help me out here, we could make a case that, you know, we've talked to 5 people, we feel that, let's say, somebody that came in higher than the majority will do the better job for us. It is over our budget. Do you think we'd have room to approach you and the Board of Finance and I guess the RTM for an increase in the budget from 150?
You definitely would, you just have to make a really good
Strong
case for it.
case,
And the one thing that I would offer is to make sure that all the proposals are comparing sort of apples to apples.
Right,
There's a large
exactly.
disparity in the,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yes.
was,
Just,
my one observation was, in reading these, that the proposals really cover a broad range of ground.
Yeah.
Some of them are doing far fewer services and the budget is lower, but they're
Yeah.
also providing less. So the question would, in my mind, it begged the question, so that we are comparing apples to apples, is what would the cost be for a lesser suite of services from the 2 firms that did the comprehensive?
Yeah.
And then also, do we want the comprehensive services, because they work pretty attractive.
Yeah.
I just, I agree with Martha, the Stantec thing. Those guys went out of the way, but in looking at their breakdown, you know, it goes through the permitting. And then it stops. So they're $300,000.
Oh, really? That's right.
Yeah.
Let me go
Doesn't
check.
cover-
I didn't,
Doesn't,
I don't think I
doesn't
read it
cover
that way.
construction.
And
If you
nor
go to-
does Q&A.
Let me double check on that. If that's the case.
It's like the second to last page.
I would just offer up a couple of things. One is, I mean, these are purely documents at this stage, so we're reading a lot into kind of, you know, we may be reading, we're attempting to read between the lines here. So, like, look, we have the benefit of bringing these guys in and drilling down and, you know, probing and satisfying ourselves. The other thing I would offer up is, you know, I guess there's been an implication, like, you know, the 30, and maybe I've been kind of guilty of this, the 31st is kind of the end of a process, or the 6th is the end of a process. I think the end of the process is when we're satisfied, we found somebody that we're comfortable with. And I think if we're not comfortable with what we hear, and certainly there's enough reason to kind of question what we've got in front of us, then I think we've got to keep working at it. That would be my recommendation to the committee. And I'm not trying to short circuit anything here, but I just want to go on record and say, like, I need to be comfortable at the end of the day if I'm going to kind of put my name next to a vote of, you know, for one of these guys. Martha?
And you're probably obviously much more experienced at this than I, but I'm looking at, and they don't have page numbers unfortunately, but I'm looking under their Phase C, title sheets, existing conditions, grading and utilities, landscape and hardscape plans, electrical and lighting plan, all necessary details to construct the project. Prepare opinion of probable cost consistent with specifications and bid documents. I assume that's construction documents. I mean, maybe I'm misinterpreting it.
If you go to the second to last page,
Okay.
the last page is their insurance certificate, and the page before that is the breakdown.
Can I make a suggestion? Martha?
Yeah.
Let me know if you would be comfortable. I mean, I floated, you know, a draft of some initial questions with the thought of sending them out to them in advance and having them answer them so that we can kind of try to level set.
Those are very good.
Yes.
And, you know, I was reluctant, I kind of stepped back from, you know, the first couple of questions, you know, what is your target elapsed duration for each of the phases? You know, for the overall project. I stepped back from actually asking the cost for each phase. If we were to ask in advance, just clearly break out the cost for each of these specific phases as we define the phases in our RFP. Does that, do you think that's kind of helpful? Does that get us a little closer to
I don't know
kind
if
of?
we'd be fine tuning it a little too much, maybe just, and I'll go with whatever you say.
Or whatever-
My
no, I'm
thought is
open.
maybe just through the schematic phase.
Yeah.
You know, if you ask them.
Well, I guess,
Investigation
yeah.
phase, it might be hard to put a number, but just to the point where they've come up with 2 schematics for us in a
Okay.
rehab, and we get to look at it. Do you think? I mean, I'm throwing that out there, but.
I like your suggestion, Mike, and if we could float that out, you know, tomorrow. And
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah.
I would like to stick with the 3 that we have, and I don't want to go back to the RTM and Board of Finance and all those sort of stuff, unless I have to say, well, I got this really good guy who's got, you know, but he's, $150,000 over budget, can I get more money? We may find out what we like, and if we do, in the 3 that we've selected, then we're okay. If we don't, then we can go down to the next step.
I agree with that.
Um,
So we have to
Don't
formally.
don't break the process until we need to break it,
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense.
because otherwise we'll be doing this in April.
Yeah.
I mean, as good as this is,
Yeah,
and if you look at the breakdown for these other guys, QA and M, I mean, their breakdown is pretty much in line with the way that Stantec did it too. You know, and it's $300,000 or more than that.
you know what, does it worry you at all that they know something,
Well,
maybe that
I
some of
hope,
these other people don't, that's.
yeah,
Well, I think that's
yes,
what-
and I
certainly-
hope they're in the,
Yeah.
I hope we can bring out some of that in the interview process with the others, because, they've done more detail on particularly on the ramp and the idea of a pier than the others seem to have done. But the others may have done it too, and it just hasn't been presented to us yet.
Yeah. I don't know how this works in terms of proposals now. I asked Kate, and she says as long as you treat all the bidders the same, it's okay before you've selected them.
Mhm. Well,
So I
yeah.
guess you'd have to officially say that you're selecting 3 and then ask it of them, but then I don't know if you can go back to
You're
the
referring to, you're referring to what now?
The whole bidding process and how you have to treat people.
Well, I think we can, I think by sending out these questions in advance, before they even show up for an interview and getting clarity on these things,
But
gets
then
us
I
somewhat
think you
towards
have to
that.
send that to all 5 of them, is what I'm saying. I think, is my
Yes.
understanding.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I'm not, can you help me on that?
Well, I don't
Yes.
see any reason why
If
we
you do
wouldn't.
send it out to one, you have to send it
Yeah.
out to all.
That's fine. I mean,
Unless we selected first.
Right.
Right, unless we've already taken the 3, then I wouldn't say you'd be sending it out to the other firms.
I would agree, and you do have the latitude to not invite certain respondents in based, it sounds to me like cost considerations, if their proposals are over budget. I think you have a basis to make a selection due to the outside your budget parameters.
Right.
Well,
I would just suggest, I mean, we've got this set of questions that we're looking for clarification on. I don't see any harm in sending to all 5.
that's what I
I
think.
mean, it's the
It doesn't
prerogative
like-
of the guys who if they're paying attention, they know, we've discussed enough the fact that they're a little bit out of our budget. It's their prerogative not to respond any further if they'd like to. I mean, we'd like them to because
Right.
there's an opportunity for us to further engage with them, but,
Yeah, but-
we've got to set some priorities here in terms of who we speak with first.
We have a short window,
Exactly.
is the problem. And then we all as a committee are gonna get another stack of these, and if we're supposed to meet next Friday, I think it is.
No, don't, I may be getting misunderstood here. I'm just suggesting right now we have
No,
7.
I saw your
yeah,
questions. No,
yeah.
that I
Add one more
understand.
to it, yeah.
But if they're gonna take that and try to put it back into a, puzzle or a proposal like this, to make sure all their questions are answered, we're gonna have to start the process all over again of reading all 5.
You know what I'll do is I'll preface the questions by saying, be brief with your answers.
That's,
Well, or ask
And
them
they
just,
can email back,
Yeah.
or maybe even say we're not expecting you to update
Yeah.
your proposal, but
Yeah.
rather just answer the
Right.
question.
Exactly right, yeah.
I don't think we want them to update.
No, we don't
Right,
want
we
them
don't
to.
say you want to, but we would really just want.
Maybe you want
And then to the
their-
extent that they feel that they've answered certain questions, the proposals, I think some of them
Yeah,
have,
they
they
just
could
point
just
it
say, please
or repeat it,
reference.
yeah.
okay.
Because we're just asking for clarifications here.
And I was
So-
wondering, maybe you wanna narrow down the questions to price through schematics, what's your timeline, how will you handle meetings, will, do you absorb that, or will we be billed? I mean, maybe,
well, many put them in, that
Yeah.
information in there.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
did,
Yeah, and some of them limited it.
right,
yeah,
2 hours of planning
exactly.
and
You
zoning.
knew they had 2
You're gonna be
meetings.
waiting in the
I
hall
think
for 2
what's
hours.
crucial to us.
I'm
to
also,
know-
by the way, happy to read, and we can further discuss the questions since they're going to be public anyway, but we can, Mark, before we do that, I mean, you seem to have had something that you wanted to share, or you?
No, I just wanted to relate that this process is new to me, and I found it very confusing to try to compare these guys, because they all had their own, they didn't use our phases. They
Exactly
all
right.
used their own phases, and so I think I have a grip on it, and then I go to the next one, and,
Yeah.
it wasn't there anymore.
Would it be helpful if, does anybody, I mean, would it be helpful if I just read through these 7 and we can quickly decide if these are 7 questions?
Yeah.
By doing that, obviously, the world will hear them, so they can start preparing their answers for us
And-
now, but,
And you're asking them to do that.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Okay, so why don't I'll spend a few minutes and I'll do that. So, once again, the intent here is to level set, to kind of create an apples to apples, a basis for an apples to apples comparison, recognizing to Mark's point that, each of these were written slightly differently, and a little disappointingly, these guys took a little poetic license and didn't necessarily respond directly to like our phasing structure. So to clarify that, then, we've crafted a few questions. The first of which is, and once again, these questions are here because it's not clear from the responses what the answers are. So the first is, what is your target elapsed duration for the overall design phase of the project as reflected in your response? So the overall thing, like how long do they anticipate it's going to take? They've got various different timelines in there, but things are overlapping and they've kind of got durations, but it's unclear. So overall elapsed time. The next is, what is your expected duration for each of our phases as listed in the RFP? So phase A being data collection and field review, phase B, building committee staff engagement, phase C, plans, specifications, and cost estimates, and phase D, permitting. So for each of those phases, as we define them, what do they anticipate the duration to be? You can take that along with the first item, because some of these phases may be overlapping, and you take that with the first and you get kind of a sense of the overall length of the project as well. The third question is, for each of our phases, A, B, and C, and then I talk about D separately, but for each of our phases, A, B, and C indicated above, how many meetings with town staff and building committee members does your proposal call for? And then please separately indicate whether they're on-site, in person, whether they're conference calls or off-site meetings. And do these numbers reflect the minimal or the optimal number of interactions? So the intent here is, if somebody, to kind of catch if somebody's attempting to just lowball the numbers when there's an expectation that's, once we get into it, we're going to need maybe 3 times as many meetings as they called for, and then that's on a time and materials basis. The fourth question here is, which members of your team will primarily interact with town staff and building committee members in each phase? The fifth is, each of these proposals is listed along, has provided a long list of folks with really wonderful credentials. I think it's helpful for us to understand specifically who we're going to be dealing with at each phase. The fifth item is, confirm that you will be providing a preliminary plan, because this was not clear in any of them, maybe one of them was. Confirm that you will be providing a preliminary plan and cost estimate for renovation of the existing structures as a deliverable of phase B. So phase B being, before we even get into schematics, we'll get a sense, kind of a ballpark here, what we're talking about with renovation, that we can then bring back to Parks and Recs. The sixth item is, confirm that you will be providing 2 schematic design alternatives as a deliverable of phase C. And then the seventh here is, phase D calls for securing of all required permits. Per your proposal, what role will you play versus what role do you expect the town to play? And please provide detail. So here I did ask for a bit more detail. So, and this was a draft. It wasn't intended to be kind of like a cast in stone. So I guess I'd just open it up and ask. And then I guess based upon what we've said this evening now, I would go back to question 2, where we're kind of asking about the expected duration for each phase, and just include the additional question around the expected cost along with duration for each phase as well. So maybe I'll just stop there for a moment, take a breather, and open it up and ask if we're okay, or is there any additional questions, or?
I think those are fine.
I think the questions are good. The only concern I have is phase C includes both schematics, which is a stop point, because you have to pick, and then construction. And again, the construction documents are going to be a function of what you select. So it's hard for them to know. So I'd say do the schematic, and then I guess a complicated construction versus a simpler one. I don't know if you want to do that, but.
Well, it's interesting, because if you just, if you determine you're going to renovate the building and say it's $190,000
Right.
for sake of argument, well, it's a lot less to design that than it is to start with a whole new building. all the engineering
Right.
and the permitting and the mechanical stuff that has to go
Never mind
with that.
Exactly.
The permits.
So and I think I said something,
You said I agree with your
Right.
deduct memo,
Yeah.
and it would almost be a deduct.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I'm assuming their bid includes everything that we have in the proposal right now. And so then you need to deduct for a rehab, you'd need to deduct if you don't do a pier, you need a deduct if you don't do, so maybe it's better to get a price through the schematic and then,
and then value engineer it down
and then,
to what we can.
yeah, find out what they
Yeah.
propose for doing the construction documents.
So maybe given that we have these now, and given that they've given us numbers, what I thought, based upon your suggestion, is where we're referencing phase C, we're asking for duration and cost. What we can, maybe another way to skin that would be to kind of break it out separately and ask for duration and cost of schematic diagrams and duration and cost of the construction.
Right.
Is that kind of?
Yeah.
No. Okay,
Yes.
I'll make that change and I'll circulate it and then.
Actually, Pam made another point that I think is interesting. If you look in some of these proposals, that like Stantec does show up as the building engineer in one of the
Right.
other proposals, so they
Yeah.
would still, you know,
On the
be part of the
electrical
project and.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was kind of interesting because they show up as like the electrical consultant,
Exactly.
and that
Right.
really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well,
Yeah, I saw that, as it
Yeah.
was a back door to them, but
But
it
it's
seemed the
not.
part that they were providing was very limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're different folks also, by the way.
Well,
Yeah,
the
different
architect-
folks, and that's
Yeah.
some of the aspects that I found most intriguing and interesting about their
So
proposal.
maybe we need to
As a
ask for
consulting
what,
engineer, though.
Right,
what
right.
specifically the role of the consultants are that they're
Yeah.
bringing on board, you know, what is Stantec gonna do for, who is it?
Neil.
Neil,
For
because
Neil.
they said the building engineer.
Do we need to go to that level? I mean,
Well, I
the
think-
person responsible is the general architect that we're hiring. If we're gonna talk about, you know, who's gonna be the painter, who's gonna be the plumber, who's gonna be whatever. I mean, Stantec, I did see that in one of the proposals, but that's probably because it's a different group of Stantec that we just talked about that does, you know, electrical work, and they may have, you know, Haupt may have a plumber, and, you know, it just,
Well,
I don't wanna be managing multiple
Yeah.
processes here, that's what we're paying the architect consulting firm to do.
I think it's a fair question for the interview. I mean, I think, are you suggesting, were you thinking about kind of up front or
Well, I think
not to
if,
pursue it yet?
you know, I think it's fair to ask, Neil how they're gonna use Stantec, as part of.
Would you be
the
satisfied
design
in
process.
asking, would you be okay with having that discussion with them during the interview as opposed to?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right, yeah, okay, good enough.
that's fine.
Yeah, okay, so, it sounds like maybe it's just kind of a refinement here, we'll get questions out to them in advance, and, I guess along with the questions out to them in advance, maybe we should also just ask them specifically, please let us know if you don't feel as though you can respond to us by because I think what we wanted is these responses back to us by the 30th,
I think you might wanna have them back earlier then.
even earlier than, okay.
Because we have scheduled interviews for the 31st, we've got to let the companies know.
There should be SOP for these guys. I mean,
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, we want the answers back, right, in time so that we can read them in advance of the
Right,
interviews.
I think you probably want them back before the 30th.
Yeah.
29th.
No, 28th.
Well, what point do
Tough
we
crowd
need to
here.
let the three selected parties, I mean, it's almost like
I would say
now.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're gonna vote on that
Tomorrow
tonight.
morning
Yeah.
at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
so that's sort of absent the answers.
Correct,
Then if you're
yeah.
selecting 3 people, then you don't send it out to 5, right?
Right.
Well, I think the questions are fairly, and once again, I'll leave it to
I mean,
the group here.
Kate and I talked today, town administrator, and she was saying the same thing. We have 3 professional groups that came within. It was public information that we had $150,000. 2 came in way over the top. And if we were that unhappy with the 3 that we're going to interview, and we didn't feel there was one that was, it, then we have all the rights to go out and possibly bring the other 3 in as long as we knew we had funding. Right.
Yeah, and I think we'd have to have a really compelling rationale to go back to
I do
the
too.
I have to
board
say-
to ask for additional funding. You'd have to really feel like you can't get it done within your budget. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, so just to clarify then, we're gonna make an official request, I guess, from the committee to the 3 that we're going to invite, and kind of reserve the right to ultimately go back out to the others if we choose to. Is that what we're
Yeah.
saying, not to officially go out to all
Well,
5?
I don't think we need the second part of that, because if we don't like what we have, that's a natural process.
Got it.
So I would make a motion to notify the 3 bidders that we would like to see them next Friday. They get to choose the time between whatever it is, 11:30 and 2 o'clock, for the process of moving forward.
Second.
Next Thursday, for the record.
No, it's
Thursday.
Thursday the 31st, okay, my mistake, excuse me.
Okay.
The day after Wednesday.
So,
Yeah.
March 2nd, all
All in favor?
Okay.
Right. Okay, so the motion, I'm sorry, Martha?
You wanna go out till 5?
Well, let's take
Yeah.
a minute for discussion, we don't have
Yeah.
to rush to the.
Yeah, well, I
Fair
mean,
enough.
I sort of made my point. I mean, I just feel that, we're changing the rules a little bit here, going through schematics. You don't know how they'll come in, what they were considering. It's not as if we have 10 to interview. I don't think it's an onus to interview, 2 more. And, actually, if you send out the questions in advance, I'm not certain, do you have to notify anybody that they've been selected yet if we get them? Well, I guess you want to set up an interview
Yeah,
schedule.
I mean, we'll have to
I
invite
think
them.
you'd have to interview
Yeah.
all 5 if you're
Yeah.
gonna do that, but I think it just might behoove us in the, and it may be that the low bidders are absolutely, we're convinced that they do a fine job, but what if we're not?
So what, just
Why
to
would
be
we get it
clear,
out to someone who's come in knowingly to 2.5 times over budget? I mean, they sort of bid themselves out of the job to start.
I'm losing track of what you're, specifically what you're asking of
Well, I'm
us.
just saying, I think I would just interview all 5.
Well, we also
and-
just have the practicality of how many we can get done,
Well-
in a day. We've
Yeah.
asked folks like Ed.
Okay, I
and-
mean, that's my opinion.
No, I guess I'm
Yeah.
not, just so I can be clear, I'm not ruling out that possibility. In fact, I think it may be a good idea, but I'm just suggesting we reserve judgment until we finish up on the 31st with the first 3. And then I guess we can kind of poll
Well,
ourselves.
that's
Again,
fine.
it's our option, or our purview, if we don't like what we see on the 3, is to get the other 2 back
Can
in.
you do that, or do you throw out all bids and do you have to invite people to bid again if you don't like the 3?
I think you have to have a good reason to believe that you don't have a viable vendor.
Okay.
I want to, I don't know, Pam, did you talk to Kate today about the idea of sending out these questions in advance?
No.
What I would be concerned about, if you sent the questions out to all 5, but you only selected 3 for interview, you changed the scope of the RFP with those additional questions, and I'm not sure that that's a good process. You certainly should have prepared questions when they come before you for interview, but I would just want to check with Kate about the legality of sending out additional questions, and if you do that, to whom should they go?
I can check
That's
with
fair
her.
enough. Yeah.
If we select 3 that you're gonna invite tomorrow, I think you can send those the questions to those 3 and not have to send them to the other
Right,
2.
right,
because
right.
They've
They
not
can
been
select
invited to
3.
go
Yeah,
forward.
Right.
you could
That's
say, we would like, in your presentation, could you also cover the following, as a way of,
No, but my question was, if you end up not liking the 3,
well, then it's our,
can you just fall back to those 2, or do you have to send out a whole new thing?
I think we can make a determination when we get to that point,
All right.
how we want to handle it.
okay?
Because we will have certainly learned something through the process as well, and that may color how we want to proceed from there as well, so.
So the motion,
Okay,
so
so-
the motion stays?
No, I think,
Martha,
so
Well,
I think
I'm
I
still
prematurely
gonna be
voted,
no,
I
but
prematurely
that's
asked for a
fine.
vote, so.
I've
I'm
had my
sorry.
hearing, so.
Yeah.
I thought I
So,
asked for the vote, that's okay.
Oh, sorry, well,
I'm,
so you-
according to my notes, Bell motioned, Mark seconded, all approved except Martha. That's the way I have it recorded.
That's fine.
okay, is that
Okay?
okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay?
Mark?
Fine.
Okay. Great.
Just out of curiosity, have you had any feedback from any of these guys?
No.
Nothing at all? Nobody's called up and saying, how do we do, or?
No, I've had one email whether we've chosen someone yet, but no.
Did you get any RFP date responses for questions? Can you tell me more about this, more about that?
Not a one.
Is that normal? I mean, you weren't here for Wheat Beach, so I can't answer, you can't answer.
Not for that one, no, but for the other ones that we've done, maybe a bit, you know,
Couple,
couple,
but
but nothing overwhelming.
I mean, they're all professionals, so they know what they're looking at. Okay.
And they all have the master park plan, I'm sure you could tell who
Right, and
people were
certainly we
looking at the
have,
plan.
we're
Yeah.
talking about
Whether
a
we want
couple
all
here
that or
that
not.
have worked in our town, at our facilities,
Mhm.
you know, so
And we told them when we get back to them, right? So, yeah.
we told them, we even put out something that said about the January 31st date
Yeah.
as scheduled.
Well, I think
We're
that-
not
Yeah.
expecting to hear.
I'm guessing they've been watching TV 79, so we've referenced kind of like we've been updating the community through Parks and Recs and through these meetings as well, so could
They probably understand.
probably
it's
get more
how it
information
takes
than most
time.
bidders get.
Yep.
I mean, I would say every one of these, either they've worked in Darien or have very comparable nearby experience. There wasn't one that I read that said, you know what, these guys have not done this before. So from that standpoint, I think they all know the process, they understand
I'll
what
have a little bit of water
municipalities work.
background.
Right, so,
They know the difference between fresh water and salt water.
yeah, but I think they all understand the municipal processes and how things should go.
You should note, though, that Schmidt gave us a range from 152 up to 208, depending, which I assume is a function of the schematic that's selected. And also, just an interesting thing, I happened to look them up, their website, and I looked at the team members they listed for themselves, not their subs.
Yeah.
And I didn't go through all of them, but the first 5 or 6 that I looked at are based in California, which I thought was sort of interesting. So maybe that's a question we follow up with in the interview process.
Again, I would look at that as if they're designers, they can be anywhere.
Well, that's probably true.
And, you know, they would be sending, we're not, somebody's not flying in from California to manage this process.
No, with that,
But that's something we would have to weigh. How
Yeah.
important to us is it to have somebody
Somebody
who we can reasonably
yeah.
meet with, who can come see
Yeah,
the
They
property?
will have a
walk
project
around.
manager, I mean, that's standard, that's
Yeah.
local.
And, we'll ask them, primarily who are we interacting with in the phase as well, so.
Because people have to attend the meetings.
Okay, are we ready to move on to new business? We're good? Okay. So, before I kind of chip in here, any other suggestions on new business? Okay, so what I'd like to just talk about then is just, I guess, the logistics of the day on the 31st. And I think Pam has circulated something this evening, just very simple, but I'll just briefly go over it, and then we can open up for discussion and satisfy ourselves that everybody's good with it. So the day will start at 11:30. We're allocating 45 minutes for each interview. There'll be 3 interviews. We'll take some time in between the first 2. I think we've allowed ourselves 45 minutes, and then between the last 2, a half an hour. The 45 minutes is grab a bite, kind of chat a little bit, and we'll have an opportunity to chat between each of these sessions as well. Kind of the general breakout, and of course, things can happen differently as the day unfolds, but kind of anticipating, we'll have introductions, and then turn it over to the bidder to give their presentation and kind of opening comments. So allocating roughly 20 minutes for that, and then another 25 minutes, the following 25 minutes for questions. And I think kind of the way we're suggesting this gets set up here is we've been pooling questions. So I think we've got, how many? 29? And we may glean some of those out because I think there still is some overlap. So I just asked the team to kind of take a look at those, and if we can get them down to a shorter list. But the intention there would be, if they're prepared in advance, it just makes it a lot easier for us to click through them and just solicit responses. And then once we've gone through the prepared questions, time permitting, open it up to a round of discussion, prioritizing the voting committee members first for questions, and then once again, time permitting, other participants in the selection process.
will you be sending out those questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Tom?
Could I suggest a different way and see if it's
Sure.
feasible? could we ask them to give us their introductory speech beforehand? So A, we can read it, and B, we can spend more time on the back end of what you just described and say, you know, they gave us very nice pictures and very nice profiles of people in California or whatever. I'm more concerned, you know, these guys are supposed to be professionals, so I'm gonna take them at that level. I'm more concerned about them listening to us or answering our questions about, you know, sand issues on the beaches, or, you know, are you gonna raise the concession stands or whatever? And, you know, whatever it is, zone VE or something, you know, for the, please don't tell anybody, the Harbor Commission should know those zones, but, but I'd rather have more time having discussions, between the people that are in the group, so we get a more comfortable feel. I don't want to know that, you know, Tom Bell went to Fordham University, he has his master's degree in this, and architecture this. I don't want to hear all that. That's here. And I'm assuming you have a professional, and you have a PE license and all of that. You know, I'm not responsible for checking your licenses, but I want to hear your creativity and hear, and, you know, hear us and what we're trying to do.
I think going through this with the Weed Beach process, though, and we did 3 in one day, I found the formal presentations extremely valuable and really informed our decisions. It was how they prepared the presentation, how they came across. It was the energy of the individuals making the presentation. One guy's key guy ended up calling in, which ended up being a real negative. So there actually, I did find there was real benefit in those formal presentations, what they chose to focus on. For instance, you know, did one, you know, and I kind of don't want to like prejudge based on seeing them. I mean, you really like, you know, do they focus more on the building versus the environment, which were some of the real differences that I picked up in reading these. So I do think there's value in those formal presentations as opposed to just the Q&A, because sometimes conversations go this way and that way.
Right.
I just want to see, what, you know, what are they coming, you know, this is their best foot forward. What are they coming at us with?
I'm not saying not to have that. I'm just saying, you know, tell it, you know, we've only got 45 minutes, so you get 10 minutes for that, you get whatever, to make best use of our
Maybe
time.
we started off, can you give us a synopsis or?
Well, I'd almost say up front, so they know coming in, that this is what we're gonna ask you to talk about. Give us a 10-minute synopsis of why we should hire you. Tell us everything that's great about you and whatever in the projects you've done. And then answer our questions that we're gonna submit, and then allow for the other time remaining, because it's gonna go quick, and we're gonna be pressed for time, and it just, you know, give us a feeling of who you are, why you wanna help us, what you've done in the past, and then, you know, let us ask questions, you know, have you done sand abatement, have you done moving, boat ramps, renovations, you know, all of
Do we
those.
want to say then, for them, to ask them to limit their
I
introductory
don't wanna-
comments to 10 minutes, as an example? I mean, recognizing, no?
To Lori's point, though, to Lori's point,
I
it
don't think
went,
it's fair that
it went very
frankly.
smoothly.
Yeah.
I don't recall feeling very many time constraints. I mean, they
No.
came in, their presentation, they're professionals. They've done this many, many times. They understand they have to sell themselves.
Yep.
And they don't want to drag on and get us glassy-eyed. And they've done this a long time. This isn't their first rodeo. So I think I think we should let the process go. 20
Right.
minutes presentation, 25 minutes.
I understand, I mean, this is our first rodeo, so.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's kind of an informal
It's smooth.
process too. I mean, you can, as they're making their presentation, you can interrupt and ask a question. If you know, it's you just have to go with the flow. Really, is my experience. It's not very much experience, but with you know the
I mean,
public
if they
works.
spend 20 minutes talking about their resumes and not about our
Yeah.
part,
You-
that's
Right.
okay.
That's
Yeah, that's
something.
definitely something. And I still
That's a good
remember,
one.
and you know, it was Weston and Sampson that we selected, but I remember they're coming in and it was Sherry.
Sharing their energy.
Her energy, and she said, "What a beautiful morning! You know, we've been to the property twice, but we just stopped down there again this morning, and whatever." Where you could tell that others hadn't even been there yet. So it was just the body language, the energy. It really, I think, it really impacted
Okay.
our visibility and our view on how we wanted.
Well, the next item, that I didn't get to the next bullet point, but maybe this may help as well, and I'm suggesting that we would reserve the right to add another 15 minutes. So to go to an hour, we can determine that as we're going through it. you know, so that gives us some additional time as well, you know, depending on what the
Let's
dialogue is.
reiterate what Tom said, if you don't mind me saying, because I think it's a great idea when we are scheduling the interviews to give them a synopsis of what we're looking for in terms of this is how much, you know, time you have for a presentation, use it well, 25 minutes for questions afterwards.
Well, I'm guessing, once again, that
So
they're
they'll
probably, if it's me, I'm watching this very carefully this evening, and I'm getting a good earful as to what we're expecting of them. So if someone wants to write up a synopsis and share it and get it out, that's fine. But look, to your point, these are professionals. They're coming in. They've got a piece of business to sell. I think I'm concerned about, you know, 45 minutes. You know, because I think there's a lot for us to talk about. There's a large group. We'd like to learn as much as we can, and we do want to use the time as efficiently as possible. So hopefully these guys are listening to us and they're going to respond to that. And but once again, I'm not averse to someone writing up a synopsis.
And following up with that, if they find that there's 2 out of the 3 that we really like, we could reserve the 6th to bring 2 back. To interview them again.
Reserve the sick.
So in other words,
February
we knock
6th.
one out, if there's 2, and we get down, you know, we're really torn between this one and this one, we could have them come back
We
for
invite them back
Oh,
for a second interview.
February 6th.
Yes,
We're
February
talking about the 6th. I thought there was a bidder that I missed the longer one here. Okay, so once again, we could potentially go to an hour here. I'm hearing that maybe there's a benefit to writing up a little bit of a synopsis or a clearer guide as to what we're asking of them. So if someone wants to kind of volunteer to do that, that'd be great, and kind of get that out.
I really don't think you need to do that. I mean, the times I've had these presentations, and as Lori says, they come in,
They know.
they know what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They know you don't want to listen to them for 35 minutes. They're gonna present, they may have some drawings or some schematics of what their ideas are for the property, and because there's not much of that in any of these proposals. It's not, as I said, it's not their first rodeo. Let them do that.
I believe we told them the day of the interview, this is what you can expect from today. We have 20 minutes here for your presentation, and following that presentation, we then are following up with questions from the team.
Yeah, and we'll make introductory remarks, you know, at the start of each of these interviews. We'll, you know.
One thing we'll want to watch and observe too is their presentation style, because we have to expect that they will be presenting at open town meetings, which based on We Beach were extraordinarily well attended. The auditorium here was full. So we want to gauge their style, you know, how do they get up and present to the community as well. That'll be something to really, to be observing, and how effective do we feel they will be at conducting town meetings.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Getting reaction, so we just kind of want to watch them in action.
Yeah, kind of let them just roll.
Yeah. And then the last item here, just in terms of kind of the general logistics, is, you know, we will have gone through 3 of these. We'll have time in between each of them, and then, you know, the thought is that we keep the team around after the last one is finished up and kind of share our observations and deliberate a little bit, and at that point we can make a determination whether or not we feel we're ready to, I guess, vote at that point, to make further recommendations to Parks and Recs, or whatever other next steps we feel might be required at that stage. So that's kind of just a...
Do we vote at the end of the meeting?
We
or
don't.
do we have just a different, another time?
We're not compelled to. We can decide when we're ready to vote.
This is executive session, right?
It is.
Can we vote on the executive session, or do we have to publicly come out? and-
So then the answer is no.
Okay, I thought that's where I
Oh, I
was
see.
going.
Got it, yeah.
So we'd come back sometime in February, whenever it is, February 6th.
Or we can come back out of executive session that
Right.
evening.
Then we have to warn that we're
That
gonna,
has to be warned,
Would
that
have to warn.
Oh, I see.
know the time.
so it's,
I think it's
So-
not a bad idea to have a week
Yeah.
to think things over, and
Yeah.
everybody should really come back with a few bullet points on why they support whoever they support.
Yeah, although I think we may want to be prepared, so I'm not sure, once again, this is a little bit of new territory for me, logistically, what we need to do, but I think we may at least want to allow ourselves, should we feel,
Could be that clear.
yeah, rather than, so Pam, can you help us with that and just
Yes.
kind of figure out what we need to do?
I'll talk with Kate.
I wasn't aware of that requirement. Okay, so that's what I had here, just that you have the outline, that's what I had here. I mean, I guess I just open it up, does it work? I mean,
this was helpful.
yeah. Okay, any other suggestions, aside from maybe clearer direction for these guys and not to repeat themselves and just kind of get to the substance of the discussion?
Those guys have all been there.
Yeah. We're the ones who have it, some of us have it, so.
It's fun, it's a fun process, actually. You think, oh, they're all gonna come in and be the same, and they're like, at least past experience is so different, like, so different.
Great,
So I will schedule tomorrow,
yes.
and I will
Yes.
get the answer to the agenda
Mm-hmm.
for that, for the 31st. I'll talk with Kate about it in terms of whether we want
And
to
the
reopen it.
questions.
Right,
And clarify, and just confirm that we can send the questions,
Right.
those questions out, as we discussed.
yes.
Okay, I mean, that's all I had. Mark, anything? Adele, welcome once again. And
Thanks, I just have a question. When we, in between the interviews, are we gonna have like a, I don't know, a score sheet or, asking ourselves the same questions after each interview? Or
Well, we
just-
have
will it
this-
just come naturally?
Yeah. Well, we have this scorecard. It's less than a perfect
I
kind
never
of
saw it, but
device.
never mind. Okay, so it's better.
Well, you know,
bring
it just raises questions for us, and it was kind of meant to be, including things like, their presentation skills and their level of interaction, things like that, and judging them, kind of
Okay,
grading.
so that's what,
So we'll get that.
was.
We'll get that to you, and then I think the expectation is we'll have the opportunity to chat between each sessions and share our
So
thoughts.
that'll
And
give you
then,
something
And
to
I'll
give
give
you
you
an
a list
outline.
of all the questions that we do choose with notes,
Okay.
with the availability to take notes under each question. So I'll make sure everybody has that, okay, for each individual firm. Okay?
Just for structure,
Right?
Mhm.
so that we do the same thing for everyone.
yes,
I found that
yeah, that was the
really
intent.
helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Mike will be happy to hear
What's that?
I found that score sheet really helpful.
You're the only one.
There you go.
Just need to send it through Don.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Martha, anything else?
No.
Tom?
Good.
Hoda? Yeah. Pam? On your
I'm
end?
good.
Okay. Laura? Great. Okay. So, I guess this is a milestone that we've gotten to this
And we
stage
have
here.
another, we have another meeting for the 6th.
Correct.
Another interview meeting if we run long.
Yes.
Well, and we also have a meeting on the 6th. If we're gonna make a decision on the 6th.
Yeah, so it's on the calendar, and we can make a determination once we get to the 31st, how we want to use that meeting, I think. Right? Yeah. It's on as a regular meeting, Pam, the 6th?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there was discussion about calling a special meeting of the commission that
Yes.
night. If this body thought it was going to be prepared to make a recommendation, but that's,
I think we can wait until the regular next.
They don't meet till the end of the
we
month.
don't need to.
No, I
Right.
think we will definitely want to,
Correct.
yeah.
Come on.
No, it's,
Right,
We'll definitely
because
wanna do
even if
something
we
in
waited
advance.
a week, it would go to February 6th, and if we had a special commission meeting that night, most likely February 6th, if we're waiting a whole week, you're gonna vote that night, if you
Mhm.
don't vote 31st, so you'd be able to make that recommendation that night to the commission.
Right, though, my only concern about that for this committee is to come together, really have the discussion on the 6th, because we're not gonna have that much of a discussion on the 31st, because again, those meetings are an executive session. You really can't have that open discussion without a warned meeting, which I think is going to be very difficult. So if the first time you're having an open discussion is on the 6th, and you feel completely confident that you're gonna be ready an hour and a half later to go for the commission and say, we recommend this firm for all these reasons, and, you kinda wanna have, it articulated and put together, and
can we ask that you
That's-
schedule a meeting?
Right.
At least so that we have it scheduled. Should we be successful in getting to that stage?
well, you gotta let people know in advance. You
Yeah.
can't schedule the meeting and then you're sitting here at 6:15 or 7:15 and saying, oh, we're really not ready for them in 20 minutes. That's my only concern.
So what would you,
If anything, I'd rather, I'd say not to ask the commission to meet on the 6th, but even put a placeholder maybe on the 8th if we can get a quorum or something.
Mhm.
Just to give a little bit of breathing room.
Okay, so maybe we
I
can
just
leave
think
that
back
to,
to back, I think is.
Good idea.
we can leave that to
You
you.
wanna-
then?
you wanna be
When's your
successful.
regularly scheduled
February
meeting?
27th.
It's not till the end of the month because of the school, the trick about February is there's school vacations, and we have enough members of the commission who do have school-aged children and are out of town, so we had to push it off a week
Does it make
later
any
than
sense
normal.
to, not have the meeting on February 27th, and our regular meeting, and we'd have to make a special meeting on either the 6th or the 8th, rather than having the 2 meetings in the month?
I don't have enough other business to do that. I mean, you're not gonna have to talk about that.
I think we would have enough to talk about.
So can you guys, and, I mean, we recognizing the need, right, that if we do select somebody, we don't wanna have them cool their heels for a month.
Yeah, it's just
So whatever you
February's
feel.
just a tricky month,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but I think to try to do it all on the 6th, I think this committee's boxing itself.
I mean, even if it's the following week.
Is the following week the school vacation?
No, it's the week after that. You just, I remember your discussion, you were saying either we
It's the
go
week of the
week
20th, I
before
guess.
or the week after, and then
After.
you went to the week after.
So even if we try to see if we can get a quorum the week after
Four.
for a special meeting,
Which would be,
Yeah,
the week
yeah,
after the 6th.
Yeah, yeah.
so it'd be the 13th.
Right. So you said schools is the following,
We don't,
so far.
No,
we don't have to be there, right?
no. Well, we can decide whether, I mean, wouldn't hurt, but,
I'm trying to,
Remind me, when is the survey, supposed to be available? Because we really probably don't wanna talk with them
March 1.
March
until
1,
we've got the survey in hand. It might,
Right,
so.
March 1st. But
It is a
I
little long.
anticipate, I did ask for a report from him today, I didn't get that back, but, he's already started, and he's checking off his list. I anticipate that that's gonna be done well before March 1st,
Great.
so.
I did think of one other question I had. I watched your meeting and I see that you'll be meeting or going and looking at gatehouses.
Mhm.
I would wanna, and I think you brought this up, it would like to blend it with the project. I mean, how,
We're
how-
pretty
what's your order
determined,
of lead
we are
time?
pretty determined, we did talk about it at our last commission meeting, but Jim Coglin and I went and looked at the Weed Beach one, it's 20 years old. To
oh no, I
move
no
that,
doubt about
to
it,
move
it's in
that
horrible shape.
and maybe come down to the fact that we have no gatehouses, I don't think it's worth that. This particular, shed, if you will, is able to be moved, so we're not worried about that whatsoever. The time comes, maybe in 2 years, when we're ready to do that. But we can re-shingle, we could repaint, we can, I mean, I think we need to replace it, it's been in the budget for 2 years now to be replaced.
Oh, it's
It's
a
a-
disaster.
Eyesore,
the guard booth at Pear Tree.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just needs to be replaced. It does. And no matter what, we can, with paint, I think it'll be fine. The style is very nice, and what we're gonna replace it with is going to be 300 times nicer than
Oh,
what that is.
I mean, no question that gatehouse is,
So I
an eyesore.
I think we'll be fine if it's gonna come to color or,
Now, is that gonna be a forklift type of
Yes.
movable building as
Yes.
opposed to having a couple wheels
Yes.
and?
yeah, it's got 2x4s underneath it and 4 different strips, or 3 different strips, so that the forklift can go up and take it and move it.
Okay. Great.
I'm pretty confident, I'm very confident that the residents will be very pleased with it.
Great.
Plus the price is pleasing too.
Are we ready to finish things up here?
Motion
Can
to, motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor? Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, TV 79.
Absolutely.